Hollywood loves to make movies about businesses because that's where all the peasants in their audience work. But writers and directors aren't exactly corporate experts and often don't even know what an average office job is like. That's why they've come up with these weird misunderstandings of how companies work. The myth. Countless plot points have turned on the 51% rule, where if you own 51% of a company's stock, you are the supreme ruler of the company and can do anything you want. The villain in Mr. Deeds had the power to sell the company because he controlled 51% of the shares, even though the owners of the other 49% were unanimously against it. Tons of other movies, ranging from The Secret of My Success to Richie Rich, have been based off of pivotal 51% moments, where the villain could only stare dumbfounded as the hero was discovered to have 51% ownership. Despite paying millions of dollars for the other 49% of shares, the other stockholders apparently have zero say in any business decisions, and probably would have to bark like a dog if the 51% king ordered them to. The problem. The truth is that most corporations require a 2/3 majority vote and are actually legally bound by some state laws to do so before big decisions, like whether to sell the company. Which makes sense. Is it really a good idea to give your company a self-destruct button that can be activated when almost half the shareholders don't want that at all? Even if the company doesn't require a 2/3 vote for a decision as big as basically killing itself, there are laws to protect minority shareholders from oppression, that's the legal term, which kick in during a number of different circumstances, like if the majority owner is doing something that makes no business sense for the corporation and only benefits himself. If the majority tramples these rights, minority owners have the right to sue their pants off. A legitimate case can be made that the owners of the 51% in these movies, both villains and heroes, make some decisions an outsider could consider questionable. Richie Rich spontaneously appoints a team of street urchins as his R&D team, which the minority owners could use to at least start a lawsuit and cause some serious headaches for the supreme ruler. Sure, maybe the most dramatic choice for Mr. Deeds' climax was for the girlfriend to appear out of nowhere and discover a secret heir, but it could equally have ended with the bad guy going down in a storm of lawsuits from what appear to be a couple hundred people. I mean, neither ending is ideal. It's not a great movie. The myth. There's no boardroom scene Hollywood loves more than the dramatic, unexpected firing. In Batman Begins, a corrupt executive fires Lucius Fox with the quip, "Didn't you get the memo?" A line which Fox himself cleverly uses to counterfire the corrupt executive at the end.
"Didn't you get the memo?"
And there's plenty of surprise firings with a twist, like this one in Entourage, where the firer uses some kind of clever gimmick or catchphrase. "You're fired!" We mentioned Mr. Deeds above for the 51% rule, but the climax of that movie also involves firing almost the entire board. And, of course, look no further than RoboCop for one of the most extreme firing scenes in movie history. The problem. Both the spontaneous firing scene and 51% rule are based on the notion that the boss at a company can do whatever he or she wants. If a CEO fired someone so definitively in a real boardroom, he'd probably end up asphyxiating on all the red tape he'd be tangled in. HR departments have extensive bureaucratic guidelines for how to fire someone and are so paranoid about building a paper trail of documentation that the process for firing someone usually takes weeks. They're justified in their paranoia, since there are a number of laws that allow at-will employees to fight wrongful termination for various reasons. Most employees, especially at the top, actually have detailed contracts to protect themselves in case of a firing. That's why HP's CEO, Mark Hurd, got about $40 million as a reward after being fired for sexual impropriety and fudging expense reports because it was in his contract. Mercedes booted exec Ernst Lieb for billing his home improvements and vacations to the company's account, but couldn't even get him out of the company because of the paperwork and legal nightmare that firing an executive usually involves. The payoffs are called golden parachutes because you now have enough money to equip your fleet of golden Learjets with the appropriate safety equipment. If they dumped him, they might have a lawsuit on their hands. And what's at stake if the company loses? Well, when Renault fired 3 execs accused of corporate spying, the company's COO and 6 other people involved with firing them lost their jobs for improperly firing the first 3. So, while Morgan Freeman's comeback was certainly snappy, actual executives would gladly go through the tedium of filling out HR forms and letting the bureaucracy slowly grind out the termination process instead of seizing the opportunity for a clever, spontaneous firing. Despite what their name would have you believe, firings are best served cold. The myth. Not only does Hollywood have a baffling idea of how most people work, they also seem to have a disproportionate idea of what most workers wear. There's plenty of high-ranking characters wearing suits. Wall Street's Gordon Gekko, American Psycho's Patrick Bateman, Bruce Wayne, whatever Richard Gere's character was named in Pretty Woman, the list goes on. Meanwhile, blue-collar workers wear uniforms, even if they manage the plant. Office peons get to wear a tie just like the boss, but they must have their forearms exposed for at least part of the workday for some reason. Everyone who works for a company has to wear something restrictive. If anyone goes to work in shorts or jeans, they're a surfer, an artist, an off-duty or undercover cop, or a stunted man-child hacker. The problem. In real life, 55% of workers report that their workplace has no dress code, and tech companies in particular commonly have workers of all ages wandering in at around 10 or 11 a.m. wearing shorts and sandals. Not little quirky companies, but giants like Cisco, Google, and Microsoft. Companies have even started hopping on board a trend where they encourage employees to wear shorts in order to save money on office air conditioning in this economic crunch. Yet, you would probably be hard-pressed to name a movie where a well-adjusted 9-to-5 worker and father of 2 shows up to the office in a t-shirt. The myth. Watch any movie where a character's company duties are in conflict with something else, family, finding love, being a good person, and you'll almost always find their source of stress is a big presentation or an important account. Maybe they need to develop a campaign for Nike, what women want, or make a big presentation on a merger plan, RV, or land an important client, dinner for schmucks. The reason Jim Carrey's character in Liar Liar fails to spend enough time with his kid is because he's always got an important case to get to, an important client to coddle. Sarah Jessica Parker's greatest challenge in finding time for a family in I Don't Know How She Does It is having to dash about pitching an important deal about retirement funds. That was a movie? The problem. How many of you out there have a job that constantly revolves around big presentations and landing important accounts? Don't most of us have jobs where we have to process X number of records a day, or fix cars, or process claims, or ring up customers, or answer calls? Jobs where we don't have one really big thing to do, but just a set of duties we carry out every day? Hollywood can't imagine those kinds of jobs being stressful enough to cause a dramatic career-family crisis, but they easily can be. Is the job tearing the main character away from his family? Maybe his company just laid off a bunch of claims adjusters, and as one of the few remaining, he has double the work to do with not as much hours. If he's an accountant, maybe it's tax season. The average overworked person who needs to rethink her priorities isn't someone who's moving from exciting presentation to exciting presentation. She's just a person who's got too few hours. Even if they need a plot point where the character has to get something done by a specific date, we all have those. They're called deadlines. The end of a project, or a quarter, or just some arbitrary deadline your boss sets, which works great for a plot where the workplace is supposed to be oppressive and unfair. So why is it that Hollywood thinks clients and presentations are what the face of overworking looks like? Well, because that's what it's like in Hollywood. Work there is always about a big project, a film, or a big presentation, a pitch, or a big client, for agents. That's what being busy and stressed out looks like to them. Their experiences pitching projects to studios gets translated into an advertising executive character trying to sell a campaign or slogan to clients. After all those sleepless hours they've spent getting a movie ready to put on their silver screen, they'll naturally invent a character frantically putting together a flashy PowerPoint to project in the boardroom. They've managed to translate their experiences into the settings most people work in without translating them into the way that most people actually work. Get a job, Hollywood! Hey everybody, thanks for watching that video. If you want to subscribe to our channel, click the big C in the middle, and to get notifications, hit the notification bell icon, and they'll send you notifications about that. Now, let's rock this joint!